He stood at the kitchen door, basketball in hand, sweat mixing with dust from the unpaved road outside. The screen door hung crooked on one hinge. Had been that way since his father left 3 years prior. I'd gotten used to the way it creaked when the wind pushed through, a sound like something asking to be fixed that never would be. Tryouts are next week, Mama. We need $180 for the trip. I didn't ask where he thought that money would come from. We both knew I'd picked up double shifts at the hospital for the past 6 months just to keep the lights on. The linoleum under my feet was cracked in a pattern that looked like lightning, and the refrigerator hummed with a sound that meant it wouldn't last another winter. I'd been saving coins in a coffee can for when it finally gave out. I opened the drawer where my wedding ring slept in a velvet box that had faded to gray. The gold was thin, barely 2 grams, from a marriage that had dissolved before Marcus learned to tie his shoes. But it was mine, the one thing his father couldn't take when he walked out with that woman from the church choir, the one who wore perfume that cost more than our electric bill. Marcus watched me lift the box. He didn't ask what I was doing. He was 15 and smart enough to know sacrifice when it stood in front of him, wearing a nurse's uniform with someone else's name still pinned to the chest. Someone had quit, and I'd inherited their badge. Hadn't had money to get my own maid yet. "How much you think we can get?" he asked quietly. His voice cracked on the last word. He was becoming a man in that kitchen, in that moment, understanding what it cost to chase a dream in a town where dreams were luxuries we couldn't afford. I closed my hand around the box. The velvet felt like dust against my palm. Enough. That night, I sat on the porch with the ring in my palm, feeling the weight of 18 years. I remembered the courthouse wedding, the reception at my aunt's house with store-bought cake, the promise that we'd do better someday. That someday never came. Instead, I got a man who preferred whiskey to responsibility, and a son who inherited his father's height, but none of his weaknesses. But Marcus, he had a future. I could see it in the way he moved on the court, how other mothers stopped talking when he played, how college scouts had started showing up to games in our nobody town with clipboards and serious expressions. They'd look at Marcus like he was made of something valuable, something worth investing in. The ring caught moonlight, throwing a small circle of gold onto my palm. For a moment, I thought about keeping it, about telling Marcus we'd find another way. But there was no other way. There was only this, the last piece of a broken promise traded for the first piece of his future. I sold the ring before sunrise. The man at the pawn shop weighed the ring like it meant nothing. His scale was digital, cold, indifferent to the history pressed into that thin band of gold. Behind him, guitars hung on the wall, next to someone's grandmother's jewelry, next to power tools that probably came from a garage sale or a divorce. 2 grams, he said, not looking at me. I can give you 137, not 180. Not even close. I thought about arguing, but women like me learn early that arguing with men who hold your desperation in their hands gets you nowhere. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and somewhere in the back, a radio played country music about lost love and found redemption. I wanted to laugh at the irony, but my throat was too tight. I nodded. He printed a receipt on thin paper that felt like it would disintegrate if I breathed on it wrong, gave me 7 20s and a $10 bill that smelled like cigarettes and someone else's bad decisions. I folded the receipt carefully, 3 times, into a small square, and slipped it into my Bible between Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, where I kept everything that mattered. Funeral programs, Marcus's report cards with straight A's in math, the last letter my mother wrote before the stroke took her words away. When I got home, Marcus was shooting free throws in the driveway. The hoop was a milk crate we'd nailed to a telephone pole when he was 9. The net had rotted away 2 summers ago, but he didn't need it. Every shot went through clean, the ball dropping to the cracked concrete with a sound like a heartbeat. "Got it," I said, holding out the cash. His eyes went wide. "Where'd you—" "Overtime," I said. "Don't worry about it." The lie tasted like copper in my mouth, but some lies are acts of love, and I'd learned to tell the difference. He counted the bills twice, then looked at me with something like understanding in his face. His fingers lingered on the edges of the 20s, and I saw him calculating, trying to figure out how many hours I'd worked, how much I'd sacrificed. but he didn't ask again. Maybe he didn't want to know. Maybe knowing would have made him feel like he couldn't take it. That night, he kissed my hand, something he hadn't done since he was small, and said, "One day I'll pay you back, Mama, I promise. When I make it, you'll never have to work another day." I smiled and told him I wasn't worried about payback. Told him to just play his heart out and make something of himself. That was payment enough. He went to bed believing that. I stayed up counting the rest of the bills, trying to figure out how to make $43 last until the next paycheck. The ring had bought him a chance. I'd bought myself another month of ramen noodles and walking to work to save on gas. The pawn ticket sat in my Bible like a prayer I couldn't speak out loud. I took the Greyhound to Jackson to watch his first regional game. The ticket cost me $18 I didn't have, but I'd skipped lunch for a week to make it work. My stomach had stopped growling by day 4. The body learns to accept hunger when hunger becomes routine. The bus smelled like diesel and old upholstery, and the woman beside me talked about her grandchildren for 2 hours straight. Showed me pictures on a phone with a cracked screen. 3 beautiful babies, she said, the light of her life. I nodded and smiled, and didn't mention that I'd been working so much I barely saw my own son anymore. I didn't mind her talking. It kept me from thinking too hard about the empty space on my finger. The gym was bigger than anything we had back home. Wooden bleachers that went up 3 stories high, scoreboards with digital clocks, air conditioning that actually worked. I bought a program for $2 and found Marcus's name listed with the starting 5. Number 23. His father's favorite number, though I'd never told him that. My seat was behind the bench, far enough that he couldn't see me even if he turned around. I'd asked the ticket seller for something out of the way. Didn't want to make him nervous. Didn't want him worrying about me when he should be focused on the game. He played like I'd never seen him play before. Aggressive, confident, moving across the court like he owned it. Every time he scored, I clapped, quietly, alone, hands barely making sound. Around me, other parents screamed and jumped and waved signs with their children's names painted in school colors. They wore matching shirts, brought cowbells, organized cheers. I just watched. At halftime, I saw other mothers rush down to the court to hug their sons, hand them water bottles, adjust their jerseys. One woman, blonde, wearing designer jeans, kissed her son's forehead and wiped his face with a monogrammed towel. I stayed in my seat. Marcus didn't look up once, didn't scan the crowd for my face. Maybe he assumed I couldn't make it. Maybe he didn't expect me to come at all. They won by 14 points. Marcus scored 22. Afterward, I waited by the bus in the parking lot, thinking maybe I'd catch him before they loaded up to leave. But his coach kept him inside for interviews. Local news wanted to talk to the kid from nowhere who was going somewhere. By the time he came out, surrounded by teammates and cameras, I'd already started walking toward the road to catch my Greyhound home. He never looked up once. 2 weeks later, the phone rang while I was elbow-deep in dishwater. I dried my hands on a towel that had been white once, back when Marcus was in elementary school. Now it was gray with age and washing, thin enough to see through in places. "Ms. Williams, this is Coach Patterson." I knew the name. Marcus talked about him constantly, the man who'd recruited him for the traveling team, who saw something in my son that our small-town coaches had missed. The man who was opening doors I couldn't even knock on. "I just wanted to call and thank you," he said, voice warm and professional, the kind of voice that came from never having to worry about money. "For raising such a focused young man. Marcus is one of the most dedicated players I've ever coached. You should be very proud." I leaned against the counter, looking at the eviction notice I'd tucked behind the sugar jar. It gave me 30 days. I'd missed rent that month to cover the hotel for Marcus's tournament trip, $52 for a shared room with 3 other families. We'd slept in shifts, the children on the beds, the mothers in chairs. "That's kind of you to say, Coach." "I mean it. Whatever you've done, it worked. He's going places. I've got scouts from 3 Division I schools asking about him. This kid's got a real shot at something special." I thought about the ring, about the overtime shifts that left my feet swollen and my back screaming, about the meals I'd skipped so he could eat twice, about standing in line at the church food pantry with my head down, hoping no one I knew would see me. "He raised himself, Coach," I said quietly. "I just tried not to get in his way. I hung up before he could argue. That night, I called the landlord and begged for an extension. He gave me 10 days, but his voice said he didn't believe I'd have the money even then. I worked 16-hour shifts for the next week and a half, came home to an empty house that smelled like must and old carpet, and slept 4 hours before doing it again. Marcus called once to say they'd won another tournament. His voice was bright with victory. I didn't tell him about the rent, didn't tell him I'd started selling my nursing textbooks to make up the difference, the ones I'd saved from school, thinking maybe one day I'd go back, get my RN, make something better of myself. Some sacrifices aren't meant to be shared. For his 18th birthday, I sent him $50 in a card with a basketball on the front. Inside, I wrote, "Play with heart. Love, Mama." $50 meant I'd be eating oatmeal for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for 2 weeks. Meant walking to work again, 3 miles each way in shoes that had split at the seams. Meant patching the hole with duct tape and praying the rain would hold off. But 18 was important. A man's birthday. The kind of day that should feel special, even when nothing else did. I mailed it to his dorm address 3 days early. Wanted to make sure it arrived on time. Used a stamp I'd been saving, the kind with the flag on it. Wrote his name carefully in my best handwriting, the way my mother had taught me, every letter formed with intention. His birthday came and went. No call, no text. I told myself he was busy. Classes, practice, the social life that came with being someone people wanted to know. Told myself that 18-year-old boys didn't think about their mothers the way mothers thought about them. That was natural. That was healthy. That meant I'd raised him right, given him wings instead of chains. But at night, I looked at my phone and wondered why it stayed so quiet. 3 weeks later, the envelope came back. The postal service had stamped it in red. Return to sender. Address changed. I stood in my kitchen, holding that returned envelope like it was made of glass. On the back, someone had scribbled a forwarding address in California. Not his handwriting. Maybe a roommate, maybe a registrar, maybe someone who didn't know that inside that envelope was a mother's whole budget for a month. Sent with love. California. He'd moved and hadn't told me. I opened the envelope carefully, the way you'd open something precious, even though it had already been rejected. The $50 was still inside, untouched. The card still sealed. He'd never even seen it. I put the money back in my wallet, used it for groceries that week, bread, eggs, chicken thighs on sale. The card went into my Bible, right next to the pawn ticket. Forwarded to California. 6 months later, I saw him on television for the first time. I'd just gotten home from a shift that had run 2 hours over. A patient had crashed, and we'd worked through the change of shift trying to bring him back. We hadn't succeeded. I still smelled like hospital, antiseptic and death, and the particular sadness of fluorescent lights at 3 a.m. I turned on the TV while heating up a can of soup. The local news was running a segment about hometown heroes, athletes who'd made it out. And there was Marcus, sitting in a chair that probably cost more than my car, wearing a suit I'd never seen before. He looked good, healthy. His skin glowed the way it does when you're eating regular meals and sleeping in a bed that doesn't have springs poking through. His hair was cut fresh, shaped up clean. He looked like someone who belonged in that chair, in that life. The interviewer was young, blonde, enthusiastic. "So Marcus, tell us about your journey. Who were your biggest supporters?" He smiled. That same smile I'd seen at the kitchen table, at the park, in the driveway shooting hoops until dark. Man, I've been blessed. My dad always believed in me. Even when things were tough, even when we didn't have much, he made sure I had what I needed to succeed. My hand stopped moving. The soup spoon hung in the air. "Your dad must be so proud," she said, leaning forward. "He is. He's been my rock, you know, the one constant in my life. Everything I am, I owe to him." The camera cut to footage of Marcus playing, dunking, scoring, celebrating with teammates. But I wasn't watching anymore. I was staring at the wall where I'd hung his middle school diploma, the one I'd framed with money from returning cans and bottles. His father, the man who'd left us when Marcus was 12, the man who'd missed every game, every report card, every birthday, the man who'd never sent $1, never made a call, never showed up when it mattered. That man was his rock. I turned off the TV before he finished the sentence. He played in Atlanta that year, close enough for me to go if I was careful with money. I'd saved for 3 months, skipping my own prescriptions to put aside $10 here, $15 there. By December, I had enough for a ticket and maybe a sandwich. The arena was massive, gleaming, full of people who'd paid prices I couldn't imagine to watch basketball. I stood outside with a sign I'd made from poster board I'd found in the free bin at Walmart. I'd written in marker, "Proud of you, baby. Love, Mama." The letters were shaky. My hands don't work like they used to. I waited near the players' entrance, where a crowd of fans pressed against barriers hoping for autographs. Security guards stood like walls, arms crossed, sunglasses on even though it was night. When Marcus's bus pulled up, the crowd screamed. They held up phones, jerseys, expensive cameras. I held up my sign, standing on my toes, trying to see over the shoulders of younger, taller people. He stepped off the bus looking like a stranger. Designer everything, headphones around his neck that probably cost more than my rent. Surrounded by teammates, by staff, by people whose job was to make sure people like me didn't get too close. "Marcus," I called. "Marcus, baby, it's Mama." My voice got lost in the noise. Security told me to step back. A guard, young enough to be my son, put his hand out, not touching me but making it clear I needed to move. "Ma'am, please stay behind the barrier." "I'm his mother," I said. "I just want to—" "Ma'am, everyone says that. Please step back." I watched Marcus walk toward the entrance, watched him smile for cameras, sign a kid's jersey, pose for photos. He passed within 10 feet of me, close enough that I could see he was wearing cologne now, the expensive kind that comes in heavy glass bottles. He walked right past me with cameras flashing. After the game, they won, Marcus scored 18. I waited near the family entrance. I'd learned which door the players' families used by watching, by asking a janitor who felt sorry for the old woman sitting alone on a bench. That's where I saw her. She wore a red dress that hugged every curve, gold nails that caught the light, heels that made her tall enough to look down on most men. Her hair was pressed perfectly, makeup flawless. She looked like money, like confidence, like someone who'd never known what it meant to choose between medicine and food. She was talking to reporters, and I heard her laugh, high and bright and performative. "Oh, you know, we've always been so proud of our Marcus. Ever since he was little, we knew he was special. Our Marcus." I stood 15 feet away, holding my homemade sign that now felt embarrassingly childish. Around me, other families celebrated. Fathers in team jerseys, mothers in heels, children in matching outfits. Marcus came through the doors, still in his game uniform, towel around his neck. He saw the woman in red immediately, and his face broke into a smile. She rushed forward, arms wide, and he hugged her, the kind of hug that looked good for cameras. "My boy," she said loudly. "You were incredible out there." He didn't correct her. I waited for him to look around, to see me, to remember. But he was surrounded now. Teammates, friends, photographers wanting family shots. The woman in red posed beside him, her arm around his waist, her smile professional and practiced. Someone snapped a photo. I heard the camera click. "That's his mom," a security guard told a reporter. "She's here every game." The woman in red. Not me. I folded my sign carefully and walked back toward the bus station. He didn't correct her. 3 months later, a journalist came to town. He'd called ahead, left a message on my machine explaining he was doing a human interest piece for a sports magazine. Wanted childhood stories for a documentary they were making about Marcus's rise. I cleaned the house for 2 days before he arrived. Washed windows I'd been meaning to get to, swept corners, hid the eviction notices I'd framed. A private joke to myself about all the times I'd almost lost everything. He was young, this journalist. Couldn't have been more than 25. He had expensive equipment, cameras with lenses as long as my arm, recording devices that looked like they belonged in a studio. "Ms. Williams, thank you for agreeing to meet with me." I made coffee in my one good pot, set out cookies I'd bought on sale, tried to be the kind of mother who belonged in a documentary about success. He asked me about Marcus's childhood. I showed him the scrapbook I'd kept, every newspaper clipping from local games, every report card, every school photo from kindergarten through senior year. showed him the corner of the living room where we'd measured his height on the wall every birthday and pencil marks that I'd never painted over. I showed him the pawn ticket. His eyes widened when I explained what it was. He held it carefully like it might crumble and asked if he could photograph it. I said yes. He asked about the ring, about the tryouts, about the sacrifices. I told him everything. The skipped meals, the extra shifts, the evictions, the choice between medicine and Marcus's dreams. He took pictures of everything. The milk crate hoop still nailed to the telephone pole, the drawer where the ring used to sleep, the Bible where I kept my important papers, the worn sneakers from Marcus's first tournament that I'd saved in a box under my bed. He thanked me, said this would be the heart of the story, said people needed to know about mothers like me. 2 months later, the article came out. I bought the magazine at the grocery store. $12 I didn't have. The cover showed Marcus mid-dunk, his body suspended in air like something holy. I flipped through looking for my name, for the pawn ticket, for any mention of the woman who'd given up her wedding ring. There were photos of the house, the basketball hoop, the pencil marks on the wall. But in every shot, I'd been cropped out. The journalist had taken pictures of everything, except me. When my sister died, I left him a message. Just one. I didn't want to seem desperate, didn't want to guilt him, didn't want to use grief as a weapon to force contact. Marcus, it's Mama. Your Aunt Clara passed last night. Heart attack. Funerals on Saturday at Rising Star Baptist. Call me when you can. My voice didn't shake. I'd learned to keep emotion out of practical things. Learned that crying wasted time when there were arrangements to make, people to notify, casseroles to refuse from neighbors who meant well. He didn't call. Saturday came. The church was full of people who'd known Clara, co-workers from the factory, neighbors from her street, members of her choir. I sat in the front pew wearing my one black dress, the same one I'd worn to my mother's funeral, my father's, my husband's brother's. Funerals had become my formal wear. I kept looking at the door, kept thinking maybe he'd surprise me. Show up late, but show up. Stand in the back and nod at me across the room. Something. The service ended. We buried Clara next to our mother in the plot our grandfather had bought in 1952. Red dirt and red clay and flowers that would be dead by Tuesday. When I got home, there was a delivery. Flowers, a huge arrangement of white lilies in a glass vase that must have cost $200. The card was printed, professional, the kind you pick from a preset menu on a website. With deepest sympathy, from Marcus and family. Not love, not your son. Not, Mama, I'm sorry I couldn't be there. Marcus and family. I put the flowers on the kitchen table and stared at them until they blurred. The card sat propped against the vase like an accusation. No, Mom. 6 months later, I was at my neighbor's house helping her change her bandages. Diabetes had taken 2 of her toes, and the visiting nurse only came 3 times a week. I came on the other days. We looked after each other, women like us. Her TV was on in the background, sports channel, always the sports channel. Her son had played football in high school, never made it anywhere, but she still watched every game like he might appear. Then I heard his voice. Your mom must be so proud of everything you've accomplished, the host was saying. I mean, you went from nothing to NBA stardom. That's the American dream right there. I froze, my hands still wrapped around my neighbor's foot. Marcus smiled that same smile I'd seen before. Yeah, man. It's been a journey. My mom, she passed when I was little. Heart condition. But I know she's watching from heaven, you know? Everything I do for her. The bandage fell from my hands. She passed when you were little? The host said, sympathetic. Yeah, I was about 7. But she instilled values in me, even in that short time. Taught me about hard work, about never giving up. My neighbor turned to look at me. Isn't that... I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but stare at the screen where my son sat, telling the world I was dead. Must have been hard growing up without her, the host continued. It was, but I had my dad, and he stepped up, became both parents to me. I wouldn't be here without him. And that's when I stopped breathing for a moment. My neighbor reached for my hand. Baby, that boy just... I know, I said. I stood up, my knees shaking. I have to go. I walked home in a daze. The street looked different, like I was seeing it through water. I passed the church where I'd been baptized, the store where I'd bought Marcus's first basketball, the corner where he'd learned to ride a bike. In all those memories, I was alive. But on national television, in front of millions of people, I was dead, a ghost. A convenient tragedy that made his story more compelling. He'd killed me in 7 words. She passed when I was little. I went back to the pawn shop the next morning. Same man behind the counter, older now, grayer. He didn't recognize me until I mentioned the ring. Gold band, 2 grams, 7 years ago. Do you still have the record? He looked at me suspiciously, then typed something into his computer. The database was new. They'd upgraded since my last visit. Date of transaction, I told him. He scrolled, clicked, frowned. Then his face changed. Yeah, I got it. Still in the system. Marcus Williams, beneficiary noted. What do you need? A copy. Dated and signed. He printed it for $5. The paper was thicker now, official looking. There was my name, the date, the amount, and in the notes section, for son's basketball tryouts. I took the yellowed receipt from my Bible and put it in a new envelope alongside the official copy. Added my hospital badge from that year. Still had my photo, my employee number, proof I'd existed, proof I'd worked, proof I'd sacrificed. I sealed the envelope and wrote 1 word on the front. Truth. For 3 days I carried it with me, in my purse, to work, to the grocery store. I'd touch it sometimes, feeling the weight of proof. Then I saw the announcement online. Marcus was receiving an award at a charity gala. Athletes who overcame adversity. The foundation was honoring players who'd risen from difficult circumstances. The event was black tie, expensive, exclusive. I called and asked if mothers of honorees were invited. The woman on the phone sounded confused. She said I wasn't on the list. I explained who I was. There was a long pause. I'll add you as a +1, she finally said. General admission. I bought a dress from Goodwill. $23 for something that had probably cost $200 new. It fit perfectly, like it had been waiting for me. I took the envelope with me. The ballroom was glass and gold and crystal chandeliers. I didn't belong there. Every woman wore jewelry that caught the light, dresses that moved like water, shoes that had never touched concrete. The men wore tuxedos that fit like they'd been made specifically for their bodies. I wore my Goodwill dress and shoes I'd polished until they almost looked new. Marcus was at the center table with the other honorees. The woman in red sat beside him, her hand on his arm, her smile practiced and bright. From across the room, they looked like a magazine spread. Beautiful, successful, untouched by struggle. I found the event photographer during dinner service. She was young, professional, carrying 2 cameras around her neck. Excuse me, I said. I have something for Marcus Williams. Could you make sure he gets it after the ceremony? She looked at the envelope, then at me. Are you family? I'm his mother. Her expression shifted. The one who's alive, I interrupted. She took the envelope carefully, like she understood it was important. I'll put it under his award plaque. He'll see it. Thank you. The ceremony began. They showed a video about Marcus's life, footage of him playing as a teenager, interviews with his coaches, clips of his best NBA moments. The narrator talked about his difficult childhood and his strength in the face of loss. Loss. When they called his name, the room stood and applauded. He walked to the stage in a tuxedo that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent. He accepted the crystal trophy, kissed the woman in red on the cheek, and stepped up to the microphone. This award means everything to me, he said. When you grow up with nothing, when you lose the people who matter most, you learn that success is the best way to honor their memory. People nodded. Someone in the audience wiped tears. So thank you to everyone who believed in me, to everyone who helped me become who I am today. He raised the trophy. Cameras flashed. The room erupted in applause. I didn't clap. I just watched as he stepped off the stage and someone handed him his award. Watched as he saw the envelope underneath. Watched his face change when he opened it. She slid it under his award plaque. 2 weeks later, a knock at my door. I was washing dishes, same as always. Same cracked linoleum, same humming refrigerator, same kitchen where I'd opened that drawer 7 years ago and pulled out a velvet box. I dried my hands and opened the door. He stood there, holding that same pawn ticket. His eyes were red. He wasn't wearing designer clothes this time, just jeans and a t-shirt, like he used to wear when he was mine. "Mama," I didn't say anything. Just looked at him. This man I'd raised, who'd forgotten me, who'd killed me on television, who'd let another woman wear my title. "I didn't know how to face you," he said. His voice broke. "After everything I said, everything I let people believe, I was ashamed. And the longer I waited, the worse it got. So you let them think I was dead." "I know." Tears ran down his face. "I know. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Mama. I was young and stupid, and I wanted people to feel sorry for me instead of knowing your mother was alive and you'd abandoned her." He flinched. "Yes." I stood in the doorway. This man-child I'd sacrificed everything for and felt nothing. Not anger, not love, not relief. Just emptiness. "Do you know what it's like?" I said quietly. "To watch your son tell the world you're dead? To be erased? To have proof that you existed, but no one believing you?" "No, I don't. And I'll never understand. But I want to try. I want to make it right. Some things can't be made right, Marcus. You can't unring that bell." He held out the pawn ticket like an offering. "I found out what it was worth. The ring. I want to buy it back. I want to—" "The ring is gone. Melted down years ago. You can't buy back what doesn't exist anymore." "Then what can I do?" I looked at him for a long moment. This boy I'd nursed, raised, sacrificed for. This stranger in my son's body. "You can remember," I said finally. "You can stop lying. You can tell the truth about who raised you, who loved you, who gave up everything so you could have something." "I will. I promise, Mama. I'll fix this. You didn't have to face me, Marcus. You just had to remember." I watched his next interview 3 months later. Same neighbor's house, same sports channel, same couch where I'd learned I was dead. But this time was different. The host asked about his inspiration, his journey, his success. Marcus took a breath before answering. I could see him gathering courage. "This one's for my mother," he said, "who's very much alive before anyone asks. Her name is Dorothy Williams. She's 64 years old, and she lives in Alabama in the same house where she raised me." The host looked confused. "But I thought—" "You thought wrong. I lied. On national television, I told people my mother had passed away when I was 7. But the truth is, she's the strongest woman I know. She worked double shifts as a nurse. She sold her wedding ring so I could afford basketball tryouts. She sacrificed everything, her health, her home, her future, so I could have mine." The studio was quiet, and I repaid her by pretending she didn't exist, by letting other people take credit for her work, by being ashamed of where I came from instead of proud of what she gave me. So, Mama, if you're watching, and I hope you are, I'm sorry. This is for you. This has always been for you. No tears, no applause, just truth. I smiled, opened my Bible, and slipped the pawn ticket back inside. Right next to the article where they'd cropped me out. Right next to the hospital badge from the year I worked myself nearly to death. Right next to all the proof I'd kept, because I knew someday truth has a way of rising. My phone rang 5 minutes after the interview ended. It was Marcus. "Mama," he said. Just that. Just my name. "I saw it," I told him. "I'm coming home. This weekend. If you'll let me." I looked around my kitchen, the cracked linoleum, the humming refrigerator, the drawer where the ring used to be. Nothing had changed. The house was still small, still worn, still marked by years of barely surviving. But something felt different. "Okay," I said. "Come home." He arrived on Saturday afternoon, driving himself in a car that cost more than my house. But when he got out, he didn't look like a celebrity. He looked like my son, uncertain, nervous, carrying a bag like he was afraid I might not let him stay. We sat on the porch where I'd held that ring 7 years ago. He didn't try to hug me, didn't try to force forgiveness, just sat beside me in the same spot where he used to sit as a boy, legs too long for his body, dreaming of courts bigger than our driveway. "I brought something," he said. He pulled out a small box, not velvet but wood, carefully carved. Inside was a ring. Not my ring. That was gone forever. But a new one. Gold, simple, engraved on the inside with words I had to hold up to the light to read. "Dorothy, who taught me what sacrifice sounds like. I can't give back what I took," he said. "I can't undo the lies or the years or the hurt, but I can start here, with your name, with the truth." I held the ring, feeling its weight. It was heavier than the one I'd sold. Heavier because it carried acknowledgement, recognition, a son's attempt to become a man worth the sacrifice. "I set up something else, too," he continued. "A foundation, for mothers like you, single parents who work themselves sick so their kids can have chances they never had. It's called the Dorothy Williams Foundation. My name, in permanent ink, in legal documents, in a legacy that would outlive both of us. You didn't have to—" "Yes, I did. I spent years letting people think you were dead. Now I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure everyone knows you're alive, that you matter, that you're the reason any of this happened." I looked at the ring in my palm, then at my son, this man who'd broken me and was now trying to put the pieces back together. Forgiveness isn't a moment. It's not a single conversation or a grand gesture. It's a process, slow and painful and necessary. "It'll take time," I said. "I know. You can't just fix this with money." "I know that too. I needed you to remember me when it didn't benefit you, when there were no cameras, when it was just you and the truth. I know, Mama. And I failed. But I want to do better. I want to be the man you raised me to be, not the one I became." We sat in silence for a long time. Birds sang in the tree that had been there since I was a girl. The sun moved across the porch, casting long shadows. Everything felt suspended, the past, the future, all of it hanging in the balance of what came next. Finally, I slipped the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly. "Stay for dinner," I said. His face broke into something like hope. "Yeah? Yeah, but you're cooking. I've been cooking alone for 7 years. He laughed, a real laugh, the kind I remembered from before fame changed him. "I don't know how to cook, Mama." "Then I guess you're about to learn." We went inside, into that small kitchen where everything had started, where I'd opened a drawer and made a choice between my past and his future, where I'd chosen him, even though he'd forgotten to choose me back. He stood at the stove, fumbling with pots and pans he'd never had to use. I sat at the table, watching, directing, occasionally correcting, teaching him things he should have learned years ago if he'd stayed. If I'd been able to keep him close instead of pushing him toward dreams bigger than both of us. "Not too much salt," I said. "Taste as you go. Like this? More like this." We cooked together, awkward, stumbling, trying to find a rhythm we'd lost. The food wasn't good. He burned the rice and underseasoned the chicken and forgot that vegetables need more than 30 seconds in the pan. But we ate it anyway, at the table where he used to do homework, under the light that flickered the same way it had for 20 years, in the house that had witnessed everything, the sacrifice, the abandonment, the slow, painful process of learning that love isn't always enough, but sometimes with work, it can be rebuilt. "Thank you," he said as we washed dishes together, "for not giving up on me. I'm your mother," I said simply. "That's not how this works. Some mothers would have. I'm not some mothers." He dried the plates carefully, like he was learning their value for the first time. "I'm going to tell the whole story, in my next interview, in my book, in every documentary they make. Your name, your sacrifice, the truth. No more lies. Good. And I want you there. At games, at events, not in the back, not cropped out of photos. I want people to see you, to know you." I thought about the empty bleachers, the cropped photographs, the years of being invisible. "I don't need to be seen, Marcus. I just needed you to see me. I see you now, Mama. I promise. I see you." The ring caught the light from the kitchen window, the new one, the one that carried my name. It wasn't the same as the old ring, would never be the same. But maybe that was the point. You can't go backward, can't undo what's been done, can only move forward, carrying the weight of what was lost, and the hope of what might still be saved. That night, after he left, promising to visit again next month, to call weekly, to do better, I sat on the porch with my Bible open to the page where I kept my receipts. The pawn ticket was there, proof of what I'd given. But beside it now was a photo he'd left. The two of us in the kitchen, him in an apron, me laughing at his terrible cooking. Proof of what we might still build. The ring was gone, but the name was back where it belonged. And sometimes, in the space between loss and restoration, that's enough. At my age, I don't need apologies written in gold. I need consistency. I need presence. I need my son to remember that sacrifice isn't a story you tell. It's a debt you live with, an honor by becoming someone worthy of it. The ring is gone, but I'm still here. And my name, Dorothy Williams, is finally where it should have been all along, out loud, in the light, remembered. If this story gave you strength, help us by sharing, liking, and hitting the notification bell. We'd love to hear in the comments which part of the story you liked most. See you tomorrow.